What if you could run your entire business in just 4 hours a day? Well, it's exactly what I help 6, 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs do at selfmastery.co. And one of the tools which is essential for making it happen is this 4-hour business scorecard. So in this video, I'm going to break down in the most simple and applicable way possible how you can use this scorecard to completely change how you operate your business without finding it complicated or overwhelming. Let's dive in. Now, to save you a ton of work, I'm going to just give you the template scorecard that I normally keep for my high-level clients at selfmastery.co. You can just click the link in the description below to get it. And before you freak out and get overwhelmed with the scorecard and how to use it, here's a few simple rules you need to follow to make it simple and to ensure that it actually works. Number 1, manual entry. Look, there are certain parts of this scorecard which are automated, but the vast bulk of it requires you to manually enter the data, and that's not for no reason, okay? When you manually enter the data, you actually understand the data better and you get a pulse on where the business is at a much higher level than if everything is just automatic. Number 2, stay on track. The main reason people hate scorecards and data sheets and stuff like that is because they don't use them or fill in the data regularly. So what happens is you fall behind, you get overwhelmed, you're like, oh, there's so much to do, so I'll just leave it, and you never go back to it. So a key to making sure this works is making sure you stay on track and use the scorecard regularly by making this a part of your business workflow. And don't worry, I'll show you the best way to do this later in the video. Number 3, trends over points. So the main problem with data is that in smaller timeframes, like the day-to-day, there's fluctuations, primarily due to the operations of your business. And if you make decisions based on the day-to-day fluctuations, your decisions are quite simply going to be shit. So instead, we want to utilize trends and the direction the data is moving in. Again, don't panic, I'll show you how to do this. Number 4, simple wins. I've tried like multiple softwares and apps and all the rest for this, but they always end up being too complicated, and therefore there's too much friction, and I end up not sticking to it, and none of my clients do either. It's why none of them used to use scorecards until I gave them this template, which is really simple. So with this scorecard, you'll notice it is super simple. It's simply in Google Sheets, so there's nothing complicated about it. And if you want this to work, keep the scorecard as simple as possible. Number 5, prioritize based on the data. So the best thing about data, and this scorecard especially, is that it gives you an actual objective view of what's working and what's not working in your business based on where the data is in relation to its goal. So what you want to do is prioritize what you're working on today or this week or this month or this quarter based on the data that is the bottleneck. This typically means it's the data that's furthest below its goal or earliest in the system. Either way, when you have this data, you can see what needs fixed the most and therefore prioritize it so that you're no longer guessing and progress becomes easy, predictable, and consistent. Number 6, assign ownership. So every single metric in this scorecard needs an owner, someone who is responsible for that metric and ensuring it's in the right place. Now, obviously, if you're a solopreneur, you're responsible for all the metrics, but if you've got a team, ensure everyone knows what the metric they're in charge of is, and that you know what metrics you're in charge of, if any. And if you follow these 6 rules, this scorecard will allow you to have a high-level overview of how your business is actually performing, what the real problems are, and what needs done to fix them in quite literally a few minutes each week. You then just need to execute on solving the problem for 1 to 2 hours a day, whilst spending another 2 to 4 hours on your non-negotiables and strategic actions, and you'll quite literally blow up your business with less than 4 hours of work a day. Now, if you're wondering, well, Ross, how on earth am I going to structure my day to do all of this in less than 4 hours? I actually showed you a system I used to do that in a previous video. So what I'll do is I'll just link it at the end of this video and you can check it out. Either way, you will be shocked, and I truly mean this, shocked at how much progress you make when you can see exactly what's working, what's not, and what to focus on. Because most business owners, most entrepreneurs, most founders, most CEOs work 12 hours a day just trying to figure this out. This gives you the answer in 10 minutes. Now let's dive into the scorecard itself. And first I'll walk you through what everything is and what it does, and then I'll show you how to use it. Of course, a bit of a disclaimer that this is a template. So, you will need to customize it for you and your business, but you're smart. You can do that, okay? So in this sheet, you'll notice a number of tabs. Along the bottom, you'll see the year tab and then all of the months of that year. Let's talk about the monthly view first. What you'll see is that in the rows, we're splitting the month down into the weeks of that month. So obviously, depending on the month, some weeks are 1 day, some weeks are 7 days. But I do it this way, and I prefer to do it this way so that we can get a whole picture of the month without any overlap. However, you can change this if you want, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. You'll then see in the columns that we're creating 4 different sections to track. So we have the business essentials, which are revenue, cash collected, expenses, and then profit. And then we have the 3 major functions of every business: marketing, sales, and operations. Now, remember, this is a template. You might have other functions or things that you want to track, and then you can, that's fine. You can just add them to the scorecard. But these are the essentials. And then in each function, we're going to track the 3 main metrics of that function, with the third metric ideally being the output of the system, the goal of the system. So if we imagine a basic system or function in a business, we have the input, a number of processes, and then the output. That output is the most important metric, as it's the one that really matters. It's the goal of the system. After all, it is the output and what the system is trying to achieve. So for example, with marketing, the output or the last metric is typically leads generated. So in the marketing function, metric 3 should be leads generated. Now, for each of the functions, I've left the 3 metrics you should track blank, as they will be relevant to your business and your marketing, sales, and operations systems. But a general rule of thumb for what metrics to track in this scorecard is that metric 1 should be around volume or inputs. So in marketing, this could be number of emails sent or number of pieces of content posted. Metric 2 should be around conversion or efficiency. So in marketing, again, marketing is just a super easy example to use, so I'll just keep using it. It might be your conversion rate on your lead magnet landing page. And metric 3 should be around the outcome or goal result. So in marketing, this should be leads generated. Of course, that is just a rule of thumb. Okay, there can be nuance to that, and it's just an example, but it does get the point across. What you'll also see in the scorecard is the goal row. This is where under each metric, you just want to fill in the goal you have for that metric, the standard you want it to reach. And if you're not sure of what this should be, just ask ChatGPT. If you give it some context around your business, your niche, your systems, your offer and all, it's normally pretty good at this. And then at the bottom, we have an average and total row. The purpose of these is for the yearly tab, which we'll get into in a minute. And they'll calculate automatically as you fill in the data for each month. And really, whether you use the average or total for each metric depends on the metric. Typically, if it's a raw number, the likes of revenue or number of leads generated or sales made, you want to use the total. And if it's a percentage like conversion rate or churn or show up rate, you want to use the average. Now, to actually use this, it's really simple. And I mean like stupidly simple, okay? You want to customize it for you, decide what metrics you want to track. And then every week, you just come in, you fill in the number for that week. So if you made $10,000 in revenue in a certain week, you just come in and type in that number. Super simple. And a really cool thing here is that you can add comments in certain weeks. So if you ran, for an example, a marketing campaign or changed like the headline on your sales page, you can add that as a comment on the week you did it. And then you can see the impact of that change by looking at the data after the change. And you'll basically end up knowing why the data changed the way it did change and whether or not the change was good or bad. Now, of course, some decisions you may want to wait for 1 or 2 or even 3 months before deciding if it's a good or bad decision or change. But still, it gives you a point of reference as to when something changed, what it was that changed, and the impact of the change. So every monthly tab, okay, I've only shown you January here, but they all look the same as this and just customized for that month for the dates, etc. But they all look like this. They all work in the same way. Now, here's how the year view works. It is the exact same, only instead of weeks in the rows, we have each month. And right now you'll just see a ton of zeros and div/not errors. That's simply because the numbers here in this sheet are linked to the relevant numbers in that month's tab. So, the revenue for January is linked to the revenue in January tab, okay? So these numbers will auto-populate as you fill in each month, so don't be panicking about this. See, with these div/0 error cells, these metric cells are all linked to the averages cell for the metric of each month. You may need to change this to the total cell for that metric of that month if the metric is a raw number and not a percentage. For example, if the metric 3 in marketing that you want to track is leads generated, it's a raw number, not a percentage. Therefore, we want to track the total for that month, not necessarily the average. Obviously, you can still track the average and there's things you can do with the average, that's fine. but we do really want to focus on the total. All we need to do to change this then is click the metric free column in the month of, say, January. We then type equals, and if there's text in it, you might need to delete the text already in that cell, and then click the January tab on the bottom. That'll bring us to the January tab. We then want to go to the metric free column, go down to the total row, click it, then press enter, and you'll see it is now a 0 and is now tracking the total for that metric for that month. Really simple, okay? You just need to repeat that process for all the months for that metric, and then for any other metric where you want to track total, not average. You'll also see there's a pile of graphs here in the bottom. Basically, they just show you a visualization of how the third metric changes over the months. And like I said earlier, we're tracking the third metric here because really, like I said, it's a main metric of that system. It's the one we really care about. And these graphs, again, they'll auto-populate as you fill in the data for each month as well. Now, a bit of warning, and I do apologize. They may break when you copy the sheet and all. You know, if that happens, I do apologize, but the graphs aren't essential. You know, you still have the actual raw data. They're just an easier way to see the trends and the direction the data is moving in. And now, to properly use this to run your business, what you want to do here is, it's simple. Trust me, it's super, super simple. Is you want to look at the data, see what metrics are below their goal, and then execute on fixing those metrics. It is that simple. This gives you a really high picture overview of how your business is running in all the major areas. It shows you the essentials of your business, your marketing, your sales, and your operations. And of course, if you want to track other things, you can add other things to this. Again, obviously, there's a lot more you can do with this data sheet than just look and see what metrics are below KPI, but this is the most simple and most effective, and it's like the 20% that will get you the 80% of the results. However, this is only true if you're staying on top of this and actually using the scorecard regularly. So if you want to use it properly and stay on track, there's a few things that I would recommend. One, have a scorecard for each function. So this scorecard that you're seeing here is your business scorecard. It shows you the high level overview of your entire business, but each function in your business should also have a scorecard or a data sheet that tracks the data daily and monthly. So I'll throw an example up on screen right now that you can see, but basically in the monthly tabs, instead of tracking each week, you just track every day. And instead of only tracking 3 major metrics, you track every metric of that function or every step of that system, or at least every step of that system that can be tracked with a number. What you can then do is you can look at your business scorecard. If something is wrong or broken and you want more information, you simply go to the individual function scorecard, get a more detailed look into the problem area and what specifically needs fixed. 2, ownership. So remember how one of the rules is that every metric in your business scorecard should have an owner, someone who is responsible for it. Well, how that looks is typically your marketing guy is responsible for all the marketing metrics, and that means they are responsible for filling in the marketing scorecard. You then go into the marketing scorecard once a week, get that week's data for the relevant metrics and add it into the business scorecard. Now, you obviously can get someone else to do it, but if you want to keep a pulse on the business and truly understand where it's at and the direction it's moving in, I would highly, highly recommend you fill in the business scorecard data. But the person who owns a metric or owns a whole function is responsible for filling in that metric or that whole function's data. And then, of course, they're responsible for executing on the problem areas and fixing them. Again, if you're a solopreneur, this is obviously all on you, and that might seem scary, but if you're a solopreneur, all you have to do is take 30 to 45 minutes on a Sunday, or you can do it whatever day you want, but Sunday makes the most sense, I would say, and then fill in all the data sheets. It's literally no different. It just takes a bit longer because you have a bit more to do because you're doing it all yourself. But if you've got team members filling in each function scorecard, you just take 10 minutes on a Sunday, fill in the business scorecard, and then move on to this third step, which is a weekly review. So, data is great. It's fantastic, but it's pretty useless if you don't actually review it and do anything with it. So you want to take some time on a Sunday, again, do it whatever day you want, but Sunday makes the most sense in my opinion, to fill in the data, then take another 10 minutes to review it. What are the problems? What needs fixed? You then prioritize it in that week. And if you've got a team, I would recommend doing a team meeting on a Monday for, about 30 minutes and going over the data with the team and then ensuring everyone knows what they're responsible for fixing that week, or at least, making a start and fixing that week, as some things, can't be changed in a week. Now, there is a right way and a wrong way to hold a team meeting productively so that you're not just wasting time, but that's a whole other video. So if you want me to make a video around that, just let me know in the comments below. And so how this whole idea of the business scorecard fits into your business workflow is this. Function scorecards, which are on the team level. Your team, or you if you're a solopreneur, fills these in at the end of every day. Weekly business scorecard, which is this scorecard in the video. You fill this in based on the data from the function scorecards every Sunday. Strategic weekly review. You review what's broken, what's working, and what needs executed on, either doing this on a Sunday or during a Monday morning team meeting. Actions taken. You execute what needs executed on, fixing problems based on data, taking action based on data. You're no longer guessing, and you've just taken back control of your damn business. Most entrepreneurs are drowning in decisions. They're stuck in the weeds and wasting 12 hours a day trying to figure out what matters. This scorecard gives you the signal. You don't just save time, you buy back clarity, control, and confidence in your decisions. And that is how you scale your business without scaling your hours. You'll be shocked, and I truly mean this, you'll be shocked at how much progress you make when you can see exactly what's working, what's not, and what to focus on. Most people work 12 hours a day just trying to figure this all out. But this scorecard gives you the answer in 10 minutes. And you can now theoretically, if you've got a whole team, run your business in 10 minutes a week. But of course, you probably do have some other work you want to do and that you need to do. So if you want to use this system that I use to structure my day so I can run my business in less than 4 to 5 hours a day, click the video on screen and I'll show you exactly how to do that.